Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome. My name is Michael Lippert. We are waiting for just a couple more people to join us. We will get started in 1 or 2 minutes. Thanks for your patience. Well, welcome again, everybody. My name is Michael Lippert. I'm one of the Associate Directors of Admission here at Michigan Ross. We're so glad you've joined us today. This is an exciting topic for me. For those of you who haven't heard my voice or story before, my wife was a 2015 alum of the MBA program, and a lot of our closest friends and her classmates were a member of the Tauber Institute, and I found it to be an incredible program, and just from watching that, and so I've always enjoyed working with my colleagues at the Tauber Institute as part of what operations is like at Ross. And so we're celebrating 25 years of the Tauber Institute this year, and you're going to hear a lot about the Tauber Institute throughout the next 45 minutes to an hour. And it's really one of the world's finest operations programs. And I think it gives our students a really unique opportunity into the operations world. And the program manager from the Tauber Institute is going to lead things today. That's Laura Turner. Laura Turner's a fantastic colleague and a personal friend of mine. We've worked across campus before. She's an incredible resource and really the expert on all things Tauber. So with that, I'll kick it over to Laura and we'll get started.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Michael. I'm sorry, was there one last thing you wanted
I would
to
just say I will be looking at the Q&A throughout, and if you have questions, please feel free to submit questions throughout, and we'll get to as many as we can towards the end and leave a lot of time.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Michael. Really do appreciate the introduction. And I am thrilled to be joining the webinar. The Tauber Institute, of course, is just one avenue or venue through operations here at Ross. But certainly it's very near and dear to me. And as Michael mentioned, we are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. And so it's a great time to be involved in operations here at Ross. And the Tauber Institute, more specifically, is a joint partnership between the Ross School of Business and our colleagues on campus at the University of Michigan College of Engineering. So really bringing in business and engineering together in an operations type format. And so I'm really excited also to have with me three outstanding Tauber Institute students who are going to be sharing their experiences with you today. And I'm going to take a moment to have them each introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karthik Raju. I am a second-year MBA student in the Tauber program. I'm originally from New York and have a background in healthcare consulting, healthcare ops consulting, and transitioned into aviation at the Tauber Institute, interning at Boeing on the 787 Dreamliner program over the summer, and trying to transition into transportation ops after Ross. So I can talk to any of you about career transitions or entering Tauber as a non-engineering student, which is very common.
Hi, I'm Andrea Krzyzewski. I'm also an MBA too, so a second-year student. I grew up in New Jersey and did my undergrad in Illinois, and then spent the previous 5 years prior to Ross out in Denver in healthcare software development. Coming to Ross, I was interested in sort of accelerating my career in technology and operations, but I also sort of found retail as a space that I thought was really interesting and complex and difficult. A lot due to the coursework that I've done through Tauber. Got the opportunity this summer to work on Amazon customer returns, so a little bit of tech, a whole lot of operations, and also some more of that retail space. As the bio suggests, I'm the Operations Management Club president, so I could talk a lot about programming and operations at Ross beyond Tauber. And then I'm also in Risky Business, the rock band at Ross. And I'm also on the Michigan cycling team. So I really try to keep a balance of academic rigor and fun.
My name is Andres Fuentes Affleck. I'm an MBA 1 originally from San Francisco, California. Most recently, I was working at Deloitte in human capital consulting, but what I realized as I worked there is I was really interested in the supply chain and ops side of the house. So I came back to school specifically to learn a lot more about ops, and through the Tauber Institute, I've had a couple of different courses to this point that have really helped me supplement my skill set in that area, and I'm looking forward to hopefully leveraging those in the retail industry going forward beyond graduation. I'm also looking forward to the team project process. I've learned quite a bit about it by proxy, and I'm looking forward to navigating that here over the next 6 months or so.
Excellent. I'm so thrilled to have these three amazing individuals join us. They're also ambassadors with the Ross admissions team. So you can find more about them on the Ross website. But the Tauber Institute admits a cohort of around 60 students every year. We have students that are part of the MBA program, as these three are, but then we also admit graduate engineering students. So students who are pursuing a master's in mechanical engineering, industrial operations engineering, really contribute to the community and to the peer-to-peer learning. In order to be admitted into the Tauber Institute, you do not have to have an engineering background as an MBA student. We really rely on the diverse perspectives and experiences of our students, and certainly that engineering cohort to bring the technical expertise. So as we get started, and certainly something that I hear a lot in operations discussions through admissions is really, what is operations? And putting that in context, I'd love to ask our students if they might share a little bit about their definitions of operations, and maybe even how that's changed since you got here to Ross. Kartik, do you want to start?
Sure. For me, I think operations is just improving a process or product, either a physical product or a workflow to make life easier for the end user. So I knew that I wanted to focus on operations before Ross when I was in healthcare trying to redesign clinics to make them more efficient. So that involved interviewing everyone involved in treating a patient, figuring out exactly where their roadblocks were, and then trying to eliminate those roadblocks. Like, that is an example of operations, but maybe not one that immediately comes to mind because it's not in a manufacturing setting or something like that. Since coming to Ross and interning at Boeing, that gave me an opportunity to understand operations in a hardcore manufacturing setting. But I think what I realized is that it's still very much a people-focused profession. Everything that I did at Boeing this summer, even though it was related to improving things on a manufacturing line, was about talking to the end user and figuring out why the products that they were given weren't working out for them. So you very much have to be a people person interested in learning how things work and how things work from other people's perspectives. You don't necessarily have to be that person on the line.
Excellent. Does anybody want to add to their definition of operations?
So I think about it in terms of end-to-end execution, and so how operations can manifest across a number of different industries and functions is actually what's interested me most since learning. So we come here and you might think that operations is traditionally a very manufacturing-focused kind of discipline, but it actually can manifest across healthcare and so many different industries. So I've been really impressed to have learned so much about how it can manifest and how it takes place in so many different industries. So that idea of just kind of executing a vision, executing a process, executing a product is something that I've been really interested to learn about at this point.
Great.
I think these guys summed it up really well. The only thing that I'd add, which is more of a fun highlight, is that I think one thing that's very cool and unique about operations is it's one of the pieces of business management that actually touches every function. Operations is central to every business. You must have it to have finance. You must have it to have marketing. You must have it to have a product. And so you get the opportunity to interface with every piece of the business and really have a general manager mindset.
Excellent. And so in working with one of our faculty members on what is operations, I was inspired by their definition and looking at way that really operations is the science of value creating. creating value, just as mentioned, by our students internally in an organization through process improvement and strategy, but then also externally for individuals who are looking at, the products that they use and certainly how those get manufactured, how they get marketed, and really optimizing those efficiencies across the way. So, as this, slide indicates, really people desire those high value lives, and operations is there to support not only organizations, but then through the products that individuals consume as part of a customer base. And so that's our definition here at Ross. And certainly it sounds to me like our students have articulated that their definition has really expanded since you've been here, or maybe even confirmed some of the things that you knew coming into the program. Well, and just as Andres mentioned, this value creating transformation, if you will, through operations really does touch a wide variety of aspects internally within an organization, but then also within different industries. So we have institute students who come in looking to go into more of that heavy manufacturing. Certainly high tech is an area that continues to grow for us. Healthcare, automotive, and looking at artificial intelligence and automation. Those are all different areas of growth that we're seeing from an operations perspective, and that is certainly reflected in our curriculum, but then also in our team project experiences. And I'm curious to know from our students' perspective if there are other trends that you see within operations, more specifically the type of work that's being done or the trends at large.
I think robotics is huge, as is machine learning decision making. I think we're seeing a lot of, you kind of touched on it with AI and data, but we're seeing a lot of companies really thinking about how they can predict the decisions that their customers are going to make, or they can predict the decisions their employees or associates are going to make to automate, maybe not in the way you might think of in terms of replacing a person with a robot, but automate in terms of saying, hey, here's a user interface that we think this is the best decision for you to make going forward, and a human gets to say, yes, that is the best decision, or no, and I'm going to choose something else.
I know that in some more hardcore manufacturing areas like aerospace and auto, virtual reality is becoming more and more common. So giving virtual reality headsets to people on a factory floor to teach them how to assemble a certain component of whatever they're making, that has been shown to reduce defects, error rate, confusion, onboarding costs, etc. It's something that's only going to become more frequent. And actually, a couple of the Talbot projects from this past summer worked on VR in some capacity, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think from other things that I'm seeing, certainly from a sustainability perspective, another one of our faculty members will be quoted to say, if you like stupid waste, you do not belong in operations, which I think is indicative of not only sustainability at large, but of course process improvement and optimization. Certainly, as Andrea mentioned, the data analytics and big data management is something that Tauber students are very interested in, and once again, the curriculum here at Ross being able to support those interests. And when we think about the positions that students within operations-focused education go into, it's reflective of some of these trends. But then also, I think this, really shows the breadth and depth of the students' interest and where they're going after graduation. So on the Tauber Institute website, you can find more about our employment profiles and the specific companies that the students are going to post-graduation. But I'm wondering for our students, what career paths are you seeing your colleagues and your peers pursuing after their time here at Ross?
Yeah, I think we're seeing definitely a lot of operations management, and what that often means is on the floor management of people in sort of a production facility or a distribution center. But we're also seeing people who are doing program management or product development, so that will often be creating new products and working on new portfolios for end user consumables. What else are you seeing?
I think we're also seeing a lot of surprise career pivoters. I think there are people that came here and thought maybe they would definitely be staying in tech or maybe staying in brand management, and they've been pivoting because of their summer experience. experience. So there are a lot of people that were interested in healthcare that maybe weren't before. There are some people that have pivoted into consulting, and a lot of the frameworks that we learn in our operations coursework is directly relevant to consulting recruiting here. So it really does run the gamut, and there's also student support, which we'll probably talk about later, through FACT groups for people that are recruiting conventional ops fields and those that might be going a more consulting type route.
I don't know if you want to touch on that. I think that's a perfect segue to FACT groups. Andrea, I know that you are one of our FACT group leads. Maybe if you talk a little bit more broadly here at Ross, for those who are not familiar with that term, but then for the Tauber Institute, kind of what that looks like.
Sure. I can't remember exactly what FACT stands for. Do you know?
Functional Accountability Career Team.
Sounds right.
Easier just to say
FACT.
Don't quote me on it.
Right.
Yeah.
As a FACT group leader, what I get to do with my co-leaders is create a curriculum for MBA 1s to pragmatically go through the recruiting process. So we start from having a bulletproof resume and end up from becoming a bulletproof interviewer. So going through each step week by week to help our MBA 1s develop and sort of be the best they can be in getting their careers. But then additionally, we get the opportunity to help network and help find new resources so people get the opportunity to make a strategy for their future recruiting.
And I'm currently navigating that process as an MBA 1. Andrew is actually one of my FACT group leaders, so I only have good things to say, of course. But what I will say is that it helps structure the recruiting process, and generally MBA 1 year in a way that by the time I come to interviews, I'll be extremely ready. And so I remember seeing examples of resumes from MBA 2s and thinking how polished they were and how impressive it was that they've been able to comb through their experience and draw out what's most relevant to the roles for which they're recruiting. And now having gone through several reviews with my FACT group leaders, but also generally the career support that's available within Tauber and Ross more generally, I'm starting to see that my resume starts to resemble that very quickly, and I've only been here a few months. So FACT groups are a great way of supplementing your story, developing your story, and making it very robust and making sure that you target it effectively to the roles for which you're recruiting within Tauber more specifically.
I'll just add really quickly from a greater Ross perspective that incoming first-year students can select the FACT group that they're a part of, and there are about 4 to 6 or so first-year students in a very niche area. So you would self-select into an operations-focused FACT group, and you have that choice. The other thing I would mention is FACT groups are led by peer coaches, and Ross has the most peer coaches of any MBA program in the world, and you can also visit with peer coaches who have hours available for one-on-one meetings, mock interview, and career prep. I think it's particularly helpful in the operations perspective in that you might be interviewing for a company in the food and beverage industry or something that's, sort of a different industry, but and prepare for behavioral questions outside of the very technical operations stuff that you might prepare for, and you sort of get the best of both worlds that way. So I think that's interesting too.
Absolutely. And within the Tauber Institute, more specifically, we actually have 2 FACT groups. So we have our operations-focused FACT group, which Andrea is one of our leads. But then we also have a consulting FACT group within the Tauber Institute. So this is separate from the general Ross consulting group, but it's really important, just as Hardik mentioned, there is a path to consulting within the Tauber Institute. It's something that you have to be very diligent about as far as the recruiting preparation, but it is something that we have outstanding FACT group coaches in that area supporting the Tauber Institute students. So when you think about, of course, that's the end game in mind, but really what leads into that is, of course, the coursework and the experiences that our students are engaged in while they're here at Ross. And this is just a sampling of the operations and technology coursework that some of our students participate in. Through the Tauber Institute, we do have some required courses that really complement the core MBA curriculum and allow students the opportunity to really dive deep, not only into the cohorts that they're a part of, but then also into some of the operations content a little bit more deeply. But then students also participate in engineering coursework. So as a general Ross student, you have 10 elective credits that you can take outside of the Ross School of Business. If you're a Tauber student, we require that 5 of those be engineering course credits. And I don't know if any of our students want to take a moment to maybe highlight some of the engineering courses that they decided to take.
Okay, so this is Andrea. I'm in the integrated product development class right now. And so this course is part engineering and part business. And one of the things I really like about this class is, as kind of the token MBA in my group, I get the opportunity to manage innovation. So I'm working with students who are in the engineering school and in the design school and in the School of Information, who are a little bit earlier in their careers. And so what I kind of get to do is put on my manager hat and help us get to done in creating our final product. So to give you an idea, we start from scratch with a prompt, and this semester's prompt is a one-handed convenience device. So taking an action or a product that you use on a day-to-day basis and make it easier to use with only one hand. And it's been really great to get the opportunity to work cross-functionally in a new space. And I've been very much enjoying it and enjoying the new sort of leadership tactics and skills that I've been getting out of it.
So I haven't taken my engineering requirement yet, but plan to take IPD in the spring. But I also wanted to make a plug for some of the other industrial operations engineering and manufacturing engineering classes that you can take, or mechanical engineering rather. There are a lot of great options available, both in the fall and the spring. Anything from facility planning, if you're planning to go into a hardcore manufacturing setting, to ergonomic design, if you're just interested in finding out how products are designed. So lots of breadth there. You'll see on this slide that there are also TO electives, technology and operations electives, that you can take as part of the Tauber requirements. Those also have huge breadth. And when I got here, I was a little worried that the Tauber requirements would be restrictive on other things that I wanted to take. But what I realized is it's not like these TO classes are full of just Tauber people. All of your MBA peers are interested in taking these courses, and it ends up being a really diverse group. So I think the highlights of the TO classes I've taken are strategic sourcing. So that's a class that teaches you what information do you need to determine whether to outsource something or keep it in-house. I'm also taking an applied business analytics class. So that is a semester-long Excel modeling class where you learn basically how to put together predictive models in Excel. So say you are going to be a manager after Ross and you need to run a series of auctions for suppliers. You can figure out how to predict which combination of auctions you should select. That's just one example of some of the types of work we do. So super cool, lot of breadth, and I actually don't find it restrictive at all. The other point I would make about Tauber credits is you do get course credit for your summer internship. You also take one additional quarter-long course in your first year, in your first quarter. So by the end of your, the end of your winter, or the end of your fall semester in your second year, you don't have that many course requirements left to complete the Ross degree. So it gives you actually a lot of flexibility in the spring term of your second year to take classes at other graduate schools or other engineering courses.
Yeah, two quick things I'd add is I don't think any of us in Tauber have felt the least bit restricted.
Not at all.
It's super, you're going to naturally, as long as you naturally are looking at these TO courses and are like, yeah, I think there's a bunch I'd like to take. It only ends up being a few that you have to take. I was just telling Andres that I'm accidentally also graduating with an emphasis in marketing because I had more than enough time to take enough marketing classes to end up with a second emphasis. So it's truly not limiting. And then the other piece that I would advise is it might sound daunting to have to take engineering classes. I was a theater major in undergrad, so let me tell you how different that is from engineering. And a lot of these classes are quite approachable, not super math heavy if you're a little bit concerned about it. They'll stretch you in a nice way, and you'll still be able to succeed.
One thing I'll just quickly add from a macro standpoint, as I'm listening here, we might have almost underplayed, and just to be overly explicit about it, Michigan engineering is a global powerhouse, right? Like we are a top 10 ranked business school. We're really proud of that. But one thing I always share around the world as I travel is how interdisciplinary Ross is as a school. And I think it's something that makes Michigan stronger. And so this is a partnership with engineering. Engineering has top 5 graduate programs all around the world. So I think as somebody who's looking at operations at a 5,000-foot level and thinking about different MBA programs, you really get to take advantage of how incredible Michigan engineering is. It's something that this university is known for, and as our dean's always talking about, the University of Michigan has the breadth and depth across many disciplines, and so that's a network you're entering, which I think is really valuable to somebody interested in this space.
Absolutely, and just as our students have articulated the kind of the flexibility, and I'm pleased to hear that, there are some students within the Tauber Institute program that do decide to pursue dual degrees. That is definitely an option, and it's one of the opportunities that I think certainly sets the Tauber Institute apart from some other operation type programs that give you that flexibility. If you want to do the dual degree in, let's say, IOE, Industrial Operations, it is definitely possible within 2 years if you have an engineering background. Some of our students are also pursuing dual degrees with the Irv Institute from a sustainability perspective, but then also through the School of Information here at Ross. So it's very common for Tauber students to look at those opportunities to either dual degree or, as Andrea is saying, have an emphasis in another area. I've highlighted the data analytics concentration that is new here at Ross. Cardis was sharing that it sounds like you are able to potentially have that data analytics concentration almost without even recognizing that you were pursuing it.
Yeah, I realized a couple of weeks ago that I'm getting it just by taking the classes I was interested in.
So that's just aligning the electives that you're taking and certainly thinking holistically about that experience. So, really the next slide is just to show or demonstrate how the operations curriculum for the Tauber Institute fits into the overall MBA core curriculum. This is an example. There's more of this information on the Tauber Institute website as far as the specific courses and actually this diagram as well. So it really just gives you an idea that there are some additional classes that you take as a Tauber Institute, just as been mentioned, that first class, your fall semester, Fall A, TO 701. But then instead of taking the core ops class, you actually take a replacement, that TO 605, which really gives you just more of an analytical and certainly a deeper dive into operations. Well, Tauber is a community of individuals, and as I mentioned, has around 30 MBA students in it. Those 30 MBA students are completely integrated into the rest of the MBA experience. So they're in different sections, and as we'll talk about in just a moment, have a wide variety of interests outside of the Tauber Institute as well. So it's been mentioned a couple times as far as the curriculum is concerned. Part of the experience, with the Tauber Institute is the action learning experiences that you have as part of the Tauber Team Project. This is definitely a place where the coursework, the leadership development that students participate in, that really links academia and industry, comes together in practical experience. And so just as all Tauber students have an math program like the MBA non-Tauber students, and of course, MAP is a hands-on action-based learning opportunity that takes place in your spring semester. Tauber students also participate in a Tauber Team Project. And so I'd like our students, and maybe if we can start with Andres, talking about what he might even be looking forward to in his Tauber Team Project, or even what, as a prospective student, you saw the value in the Tauber Team Project.
Sure. So I think the immediate value I perceived when applying to Tauber more specifically was the opportunity to exercise those ops skills that I'm gaining through the coursework and through my first year here at Ross. As I look forward to what that project might be, I'm looking at perhaps addressing certain skill gaps or skill opportunities that I really want to supplement. So there are particular industries in which I'd like to work longer term. I've highlighted retail, so that's likely an industry in which I will look to focus my Tauber project in. However, I'd say what I've been really impressed about and talking to MBA 2s is sometimes the industry in which they want to work longer term is not actually the one in which their project was focused, because there was a skill that they wanted to gain and they were exercising that in a very different context. So I'm really looking forward to jumping into that process as I think about both my project experience, but also my full-time, where can I look to close some skill gaps and also practice some management skills. That's something that I've been able to do informally in some of my coursework to this point, but definitely looking to do it at a more practical perspective through the project itself.
Excellent. I don't know if either of you want to share a little bit more about your Tauber Institute team project experience.
Yeah, sure. So at the Boeing Company, I was paired with one engineering student, and we basically had to work together to understand why people on the 787 Dreamliner line weren't getting the parts they needed to complete the build of the plane each day. So very high-level, nebulous operational problem that had a pretty huge impact. So Boeing implemented a new manufacturing process a few years ago and still hasn't been able to perfect it, and they were basically bringing us there to refine this large-scale process. But this is something that's used to produce hundreds of planes a year at 2 different sites in the US, and they basically gave us the keys to all of their data and error reports and the whole factory. So we got to be in the factory with mechanics and engineers and designers and C-suite folks every single day trying to problem solve. The slide shows, so 4 bullets. The first 4 bullets there really kind of show why the Tauber internships stand out compared to a regular MBA internship. So so there are 14 weeks, which is slightly longer than the average of 12 weeks for an MBA internship. But when you get on the ground, you realize that time actually is really valuable for producing a substantive end product. Another advantage is that like I said, you get visibility with senior executives, and you have an engineering and a business school faculty advisor the entire time. So most of us had weekly conference calls with ours, and some of us were lucky enough to have them fly to meet us for our midpoint presentations. And as I mentioned before, you get course credit. So all of this basically sets you up to take some risks and have a support network, which you might not get in a traditional MBA internship program. So for me, I think it was incredibly valuable. I also think as a career switcher, I'm not sure I would have had the opportunity to pivot from healthcare to aviation if it wasn't for Tauber.
Yeah, I think I'll be brief, but I think I just want to put an exclamation point on the depth of these internships. When I kind of talked about the scope of, so I was at Amazon, and when I talked about the scope of my internship and what we did and what we delivered, and the rigor, I mean, there is no joke. It's hard, but that's part of it. That's business school for you. And the fact that I kind of came back and I said, yeah, we did this, that, and the other thing, and it was big numbers and big results, and I'm under an NDA and I can't tell you anything. But it is a lot. It is a lot more substantive than you might get otherwise through a normal MBA internship.
Excellent. And I often get the question of, so what is the selection process for these team projects? If it's something that is somewhat predetermined, how does that really give me the experience that I'm hoping to have as part of my MBA, knowing that you have that limited internship time between your first year and second year? And so this slide is a little overwhelming. Don't let it daunt you. And the process itself is one that, of course, is refined, but continues to, take student feedback into consideration. But really want to just emphasize, and maybe, Andrea, as a fact group lead, if you wouldn't mind just kind of walking through what this process looks like for a Tauber student. Of course, this is recruiting for your Tauber team project. So thinking about it in context of you've started your MBA program, you're here on campus in the fall, what do the next 8 months look like for you?
So the first thing is you get assigned to your fact group and you start attending fact group. And the first things you work on in fact group are your networking skills and your resume. And that really enables you to start networking at Ross corporate presentations, which will come on campus for MBA 2s, for MBA 1s. It's a pretty low stakes environment where you get the opportunity to start meeting companies, to start meeting people who work there, developing relationships, so that as you are starting to prep for your interviews, you feel very informed and ready. That's one advantage actually to the Tauber program, is that your interviews are a little bit later. So it feels a little less hectic as an MBA 1 a lot of the time, because you're not immediately recruiting out of the gate. So from there, around winter break, the Tauber project, what's the word I'm looking for? Guidelines start coming out, so you have an idea of what scope is coming across all the projects. And you have an opportunity to review those, so you get to see which companies are coming, what the scope of the project is going to look like, and you really have an opportunity to say, what is it that I'm looking to get out of my Tauber project, and what is it that this project offers? And I think one great thing here is that because they are so specifically scoped, even though the scope does change, you really have an understanding of what you can potentially gain out of it other than just working for a company. And I think Karthik was going to talk a little bit more about the breadth and the depth of those.
Sure, yeah. So the administration has been really willing to accept student feedback on the types of internships people are looking for the summer. So they've changed pretty drastically over the past few years. So Ross as a whole and the College of Engineering too, has been really interested in tech. The number of tech projects has increased significantly. We've admitted more students that are interested in healthcare and finance. So there were several healthcare projects this summer, including one at Fresenius Dialysis and one at the Mayo Clinic in clinic operations. We also had our first ever finance project with Principal Financial Group. So the program is trying to meet multidisciplinary needs based on what students are telling them. The other thing I would say is a lot of people are worried about entering an industry that they have no experience in and wondering how companies will gain an interest in them. And the truth is, when the companies first come in the recruiting process, they do a resume review of everyone's resumes, and they flag the people that have backgrounds that they think would be a good fit. And that might not necessarily be you if you don't come from that background. But you do get an opportunity to bid for interviews with these companies. And once you're in that interview room, basically everyone's on a level playing field, no matter what your background was before business school. So being able to get that foot in the door and be able to explain why you would bring value to a company, I think is super valuable.
Well, and I'd like to add to that, just from the standpoint of these are an extension of your education. And the companies that we partner with also know that not only are you coming in as a multidisciplinary team, then of course you're bringing your faculty experts as well. And so this is definitely a situation where we want you to learn, the companies want you to learn. They know that it's team versus individual and the complete package that they're receiving.
One question I would have just looking at this slide, this is very centric on year one. And so if you guys could maybe speak a little bit to what the recruiting process looks like in year two and the opportunities to maybe return, if you had a great experience and what that looks like at the company that you might have had a team project at and how frequent that is. And if not, what re-recruiting might look like or something along those lines.
Sure. I'd love to continue walking through this process.
Yeah.
So I'll finish up with year one, and then we can touch a little bit on year two. So as we mentioned, after you get an opportunity to sort of review the project, you go to project presentations. And so these are the companies coming in and saying, this is what we're doing, this is why we're excited, this is a little bit more about us. And immediately after those, you have an opportunity to network directly with the hiring manager of those projects. And so this is an opportunity for you to build relationships and learn more. And as Karthik mentioned, sure, they might flag some people who are maybe naturally suited for that project, given their background. But this is also an opportunity for you to develop a relationship and even with a different background, get an opportunity to be closed listed by that company. So closed lists are opportunities for companies to say, hey, I'd really like to interview this person. After these are all done, you get an opportunity to bid on projects as well. So as Karthik mentioned, bidding gives you the chance to express your own interest and your own passion on projects. And I think it's rather unique as compared to the normal Ross experience, because in normal and Ross, you drop your resume and a company either gives you an interview or they don't. This is an opportunity for you to select some of your own, you get to select it yourself. From there, you have a minimum of 5 interviews that you'll do with companies. I actually ended up with 6. I know a number that end up with 7. You get these additional interviews through bidding. Once everyone has 5, there are some companies that will still have slots. I actually got to interview for all 6 of my top choice companies. So that was really exciting for me. And then at the end, you rank your internships from a first choice to last choice. If you do more than 5, you get to say that one of them is one that you don't want to do, or 2 of them if you do even beyond that. And the company ranks you as well. And so then there's a matching algorithm that Tauber will run that is focused on how to make everyone the happiest they possibly can be in the best possible way. I think this is one thing that has created a lot of anxiety for students. But as a second year, we kind of watch all the MBA ones freak out about this. And in reality, we tell them, look, it all works out. Almost everyone in the cohort got one of their top 3 choices. And those who didn't come to fact group. So honestly, if you follow the process and if you do your preparation, you will have a very positive outcome. Honestly, most of us were pretty indifferent amongst our top 3 and knew that we would gain some very positive experiences. So once they were selected, that was excellent. At the same time, your MAP bidding is going on. So we'll talk about MAP in a little bit here. But one thing I want to highlight with MAP is that you have the opportunity to balance what your MAP choice is with what your Tauber project might be. The way that the timing works out, you don't know exactly which Tauber project you get when you're bidding on MAP, but at least you'll have an idea of scope. So for instance, I knew I wanted to do a more tech-focused MAP project because our Tauber projects we had some in tech, but they were more focused in operations tech, and I wanted to do some tech strategy to really round out my sort of tech knowledge base. Then you do your projects, and then you do Spotlight, which is a final presentation for sharing what you did, what impact you have, and ultimately scholarship. Yep. That's the whole timeline.
That is. So it's definitely intense, and it's something that Andrew's done a great job highlighting the different steps there. And it's a little unique. It's not the same process that traditional MBA students would go through. I did want to mention that Karthik and his team did win Spotlight. So Spotlight's this amazing competition where you not only present to your peers, but also to industry as well. And it's a healthy competition, and they received first place. But to Michael's question about placement or full-time recruiting, about 70% of Tauber Institute students receive offers with the company that they did their Tauber team project with. About 50% of the students end up taking those offers, which to me is a great percentage. I actually really like that because it allows the opportunity for students, and in fact, most MBA students, whether they're Tauber or not, re-recruit after their internships. I'm seeing a lot of nods around the room, and it's definitely something that Tauber team projects don't limit you to those companies for full-time recruiting. As you see on the top of this slide, Tauber students, just as MBA students, are always networking with companies that are within Tauber and not within Tauber. And so if you're strategic about that and certainly aligning those opportunities throughout your experience here at Ross, you can be quite successful. I don't know if there's anything that you guys wanted to add to what that looks like.
Sure. So one thing to add, I was a little nervous. So Andrea just covered this recruitment process, which is very different from the traditional MBA process. And I was worried about full-time recruiting as a second-year student. I was worried that I didn't have all the information maybe that I needed to recruit and follow the recruitment dashboard online. But I think something that has been changing a lot is second-year students are trying to train first-year students on all the things they need to know about full-time recruiting so that when their second year starts, it is as seamless as possible. Mm-hmm. I know that the fact group format has changed completely to inform students how to use the recruitment dashboard, how to bid for full-time opportunities, how to sign up for corporate presentations. So by the time you get to campus, I think as a Tauber student, you will understand the full-time recruiting process just as well as any MBA student here.
And another thing I'd add is that I've heard from many, many recruiters just a deep respect for Tauber students. It's a differentiator on your resume. There are lots of companies that are looking for some serious operational horsepower. And I've heard from recruiters that when they see a Tauber resume, it often gets pulled to the top of the pile. So that's one thing to just really think about. If you want to be in an operations space, you are not stunting yourself by doing a Tauber internship. These recruiters know what Tauber is, they know who you are, and they want to hear from you because they know that you have a better depth in operations than most.
I think as I consider my broader kind of path to the top in business, knowing how a business operates is crucial to your success. And so ops is one way through which you can gain that expertise and that experience. I don't know if I'm going to work in ops forever. I can't possibly think that far ahead, but I know that understanding kind of that end-to-end execution of how something is made is something that's going to be crucial to my general business knowledge and understanding and progression. So I'm really excited for what Tauber offers in that space, but that's not to say you're locked into ops forever. It's a great knowledge base to have because you can leverage those skills and that knowledge indefinitely.
Excellent. So knowing that we just have a little bit of time left on the webinar today, I wanted to give at least a little shout out to the operations community here at Ross, not only within the Tauber Institute, but also the greater Ross operations community. I think, certainly trends as far as, being solution providers, innovators, value collaborators, creators and collaborators, lends to who they are as individuals. But the things that they're involved in, Andrea is the president of our Operations Management Club here at Ross, which, you do not have to be a Tauber Institute student to be part of. There's a lot of really exciting opportunities in that realm. But there's also opportunities within the Tauber Institute to hone your leadership through the Global Operations Conference, through our Student Advisory Board. But really, it's what I would think a very dynamic community of individuals. And I think our students would agree. But thinking ahead to the Tauber Institute admissions, if what you've heard today sparks of interest, and you have either applied to Ross or are thinking about applying, it's not too late. You will see on the MBA admissions application, there is a checkbox that says, I'd like to apply to the Tauber Institute. If you are a round one applicant to Ross and you did not check that box, you can certainly express an interest and apply to the Institute. If you're a round two applicant and you are thinking about applying to Ross, definitely take some time to think about if the Tauber Institute is the right fit for you. And one of the things that I would highly encourage any student who is sparked by what they've heard today, definitely look at the Tauber Team projects on the Tauber Institute website. That listing is fairly comprehensive as far as the project scopes. And the companies we've partnered with in the past, that is expanding, certainly, as our students have mentioned. But if you can find 5 to 7 projects that are of real interest to you and you feel like would be really beneficial for your career trajectory, we just might be the right fit for you. So I just want to mention that is the admissions process, and want to leave any time for questions that we might have or any additional comments from our students.
Laura, before we move into Q&A, just a couple of maybe FAQs about the admissions process that I always get. If somebody's a little bit on the fence and not sure if Tauber is for them, but kind of interested, do we hold it against them if they don't check the box now, or theoretically somebody can apply in April or sometime over the summer even, right?
So yes, so that's a great question. So no, we don't hold it against you. The earlier, to be honest, that you can apply during the admissions process, I would say better, just in that the Tauber Institute is able to provide scholarships that are separate from Ross scholarships. So that is one incentive in applying earlier in the process. Historically, we've also had a scholarship application later in the summer. But just to be on top of things, I would highlight that that's something that you might want to consider early on. I would also reach out to our students. We have 12 ambassadors that are part of the Ross Ambassador Program. Definitely touching base with them before you make that decision as well, just to hear more about your experience and how their experience has really benefited their time here at Ross.
Sure. A couple other quick things I'll add that come up about the separate admissions process that I think are really important. If you do apply to Tauber when you submit your application for Ross, we will get you a decision about both programs on the decision notification day so that you can make the best decision possible. I'd also add, and this is great news, Tauber has its own scholarship, policy and different scholarships available than Ross admissions. So there is the benefit of possibly receiving a scholarship from the Tauber program in addition to whatever financial aid, including scholarships you would get from regular Ross admissions, which is awesome to hear. The last thing I'll add, because I think I saw a question come in about this, if you are invited to interview with the Ross program and you're applying to Tauber, you would have a specific Tauber interview about your career goals and interest in the program with Laura. So
yes, this is true. And
definitely something to prepare for.
Yeah, and so if you're coming to campus for those interviews, it can be on the same day or at a different time, and those interviews are conducted in person and via Skype.
Awesome. So, and one thing, there's a couple of questions coming in that I'll just take as quick hitters. One is, if you're interested in an operations career or operations as a long-term interest, but maybe the Tauber program isn't the right fit for you, you can absolutely be a part of the Global Operations Conference, the Operations Club. It is not we do not, as an admissions team, read an essay and say, oh, you're interested in operations, you haven't applied to Tauber, and say you're not a good fit. That's not how it works. We think it's a wonderful program and a great add-on, but you have to be comfortable with that as well. And so do not worry about that or feel like Ross is in the school from you if you're interested in operations, but not Tauber. I did want to ask you guys, because this comes up on the road for me all the time. MAP is a big part of Ross and who we are as an action-based learning school, and we've kind of talked about the least today as we would typically. Can you guys talk a little bit about the MAP projects you chose and the experiences you were looking for and how that, it'd be great to hear what your project was quickly, but also were you looking for a different experience or a very similar experience in the operations world? Because I think that's an interesting dynamic here.
Sure. So my MAP was through the William Davidson Institute, Ross's social impact arm. So I was in Kumasi, Ghana for about half of my MAP time in operations/healthcare/tech project, trying to help a hospital move from cash-based payments to mobile money. So sort of using operations within a social impact space in a low to middle income country, something that I've never done before. The thing that I like the most about MAP is you could use it for lots of different reasons. Everyone has a different motivation in choosing a MAP project. For me, it was using my ops knowledge in a new type of environment and also traveling to Ghana. I've never been to the African continent, and it was an incredible experience. One of my teammates was going into healthcare consulting and thought that this would be a great fit for him. Another was moving into social impact, so the project was a good fit for him. So people have very different reasons for choosing MAP projects.
Yeah, I talked about mine a little bit. So for me, I was looking to get a little bit more tech strategy in my wheelhouse. And so I did a business development MAP with Microsoft. I think that's pretty much the extent for me.
Cool. Laura, we got a question, to anybody. How do faculty advisors chosen for each team project over the summer, and what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about the selection process. We certainly partner with not only as we mentioned, the engineering, but the business faculty, and it ranges. Some are in leadership positions, such as the Zaluri Institute, and are focusing on entrepreneurship and bring in that aspect to a particular team project that they're matched on. Some are on the faculty at the College of Engineering and bring a very different technical perspective. And so we look at the project content, we look at the faculty expertise. Actually, faculty get to review the projects and also, in essence, bid on the projects that they're the most interested in. And many of their projects and the work that they do on a Tauber team project can certainly turn into research or can complement what they're doing in the classroom as part of their faculty position here at University of Michigan.
Awesome. Well, I think we have time for about one more question. One of the things I get asked a ton on the road that I think we should talk about is, and we also have great panelists to speak to this, is a lot of the similar programs maybe in the MBA landscape for specialties and operations require a really core engineering background as part of their program. So we have a theater major in the room, we have career switchers. Can we all sort of touch on, what it's like? I think we briefly spoke of, what it's like having, a non-traditional background for the program. But Laura, when you're evaluating somebody's application for the Tauber Institute, also, you know, if somebody doesn't have experience in operations or a core engineering background, what are the types of things we're looking for?
Absolutely. So even though that's not a requirement of the admissions process, and of course our students are able to succeed within the program as non-engineers, but I would say that having a strong analytical background, or at least experience, you know, in a quantitative role in some capacity is definitely beneficial. You know, I think that being said, you know, that's directly related to the coursework that students take and how they're going to succeed. You know, I think that with the difference between other programs that do require the engineering background, they just don't have the same mix of the engineering students that are coming into the program that the Tauber Institute does. And that is definitely by design within this program. And certainly want to highlight and emphasize just how those different backgrounds, even within the MBA program, only about a third of our students have an engineering background. That third is definitely valued. But the peer-to-peer learning that comes from the different backgrounds and experiences, I think only enhances the community. But I don't know, Andres, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Well, I'm a poli-sci major in college, so I'm making a big...
There you go.
I'm coming from human capital consulting most recently, but as I mentioned, I saw that I wanted to be on that side of the house in consulting, and I'm surrounded by people. I think 93% of my class are career switchers, and that's a stat you'll hear a lot, but it's because people are looking to get into very different industries. So I might have some classmates who are looking to take my spot as a consultant within human capital, and that's great. And there are some people who might have worked in operations and are looking to switch, and I might be taking their spot. But you're able to learn so much through Tauber, but also Ross more generally, and even the University of Michigan, to quickly supplement the skills that you have and also leverage the skills that you have to kind of have this perfect marriage in whatever future role you might be pursuing. So I'm really intrigued to see how that manifests both in my team project, but also full-time role, because you're leveraging what you've already got. You have all this amazing experience, and you just want to supplement that through business school and then Tauber more specifically.
The only other thing I would add, in the core curriculum, you know, it's not, operations is not just an algorithm. The examples that we cover in class are related to every possible industry. In our core ops classes, we've covered cases in healthcare and fashion, in tech, in design, in restaurant queues,
cooking, cookies specifically.
And you know, what you'll find is, yes, you can create a model, or an engineer could create a model, but there's so many human factors that you have to consider, and people's backgrounds in this program really do come in handy more than you think.
Awesome. Well, I know this is a very unique program. There's sort of a lot of intricate details, so we've covered a lot of ground. There are some questions we didn't get to, and Laura, I know, is awesome about connecting with prospective students, and we'll probably get back to you on some of these. Also, Laura's information is not only on the screen, but I'll send out a follow-up email, you know, from a greater Ross admissions perspective with some helpful links. You know, we'll send out the Tauber employment report, some next steps in the process, because I know there was a lot mentioned here today, and it'll be easier to connect with those on the back end. So keep an eye out for that and a full recording in case you want to follow up with one of the panelists or hear anything else a little bit more in depth again. Thank you all for listening. We're really looking forward to reading your applications, meeting you here on campus, and we're excited to see you soon. Go Blue.
Go Blue.
Blue.
Thank you guys so much.
No problem.
Gosh, you guys are great.